Hi folks, AS Christie here once again. I decided that since today I initiated my series of lectures entitled Topics in the Occult, I'd start also my occult blog today. And there's two things I want to talk about. The first, two projects. The first is what I call a remnant jar. And the second is a new and powerful spirit I just met. It'll be in the draft of the second book, which I intend to get started at some point. So, first, the remnant jar. The remnant jar is a device for pulling literally thousands of remnants out of their graves and into the jar as soon as possible, at once. Now, this method was revealed to me by a spirit, and I have yet to try it because I'm not done building it yet. But I can already feel a certain power that it's developing, and I'm not entirely sure if this is the psychic sort of power or if it's just the sheer morbidity of its construction. So, if you are not constitutionally strong, if you're under 18, stop now because I'm going to talk about some really nasty shit that I put into this device. So the vision that came into my head when I asked the spirit for a method of doing this was a skull, human or animal, it didn't matter, sitting on graveyard dirt. And it was activated by the addition of a drop of my own blood onto the skull, and that was the start of the activation of the device. And the vessel it's put in, that you close once the ritual's done to seal in the spirits, that's the jar. So I set about looking for a skull. What I found instead was an opportunity to use some really interesting blood magic. You see, I found a toad, and I knew that this toad was going to be the source of the power of the soul jar. So, basically, I engaged in a sort of blood magic, and I'm going to talk a lot about blood magic and sacrifice at a later point. But for now, know that I took this toad and I used it. More specifically, I mummified it. I embalmed it, and that's going to be the source of the skull, the bones that are used at the heart of this device. And in addition to the graveyard dirt, I've also added all the blood and embalming fluids into it, so that it's the ground is as close to death ground as you can get. It is literally the ground on which the animal not only died, but had its essence poured into it. So the salt, the other chemicals were put in with the dirt, as well as, all the nasty bits. And then the mummified frog was placed on top of this stuff. Now, I also had to use spices to keep it from smelling too bad, but the basic structure of it is done. And the ritual, which I haven't tried yet, is basically involves a couple of shamanic activities, the blood activation, and the, like, literally rattling a chain and calling them. My intention is to go out into a cemetery and start pulling in remnants. And I've talked about remnants before. I'll give you a more detailed explanation of what they are at some point in the future. So that project is nearing completion. It's really cool, and of course, for legal purposes, this could just be something I'm making up, telling you a story. I have not, for legal purposes, advocated killing animals. Okay, so the second part is a spirit of lycanthropy, a therianthropy, specifically a good spirit for becoming a cat creature. And rather than drawing it out, I've painted the sigil. It sort of looks like a cat. It looked less cartoonish when I drew it in my notebook after I saw it. This spirit is called Kisekisekodo. And by drawing the sigil, you almost, and saying the words almost instantly with the intent, you begin to feel a shift into a cat-like presence. Now, this spirit appears as a small golden cat with glowing yellow eyes. But its real power comes when the spirit closes its eyes. Or, well, rather, its eyes sort of evaporate from its skull, and a green third eye opens. And that is when its power really feels the strongest. But, just muttering the words a few times outside earlier, Kisekisekodo, 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 I was drawn into not like voluntarily, I was drawn into a crouching position and started to paw at the ground. And I'm a big guy. It's not easy for me to get into a crouching position, but it was actually pretty easy to do this and keep my balance. And I'm sure if I pushed it further, I would have experienced other changes as well. So, thank you, and have a good night.